Hello, and welcome to the Authentically Elisa podcast, Unmasking Your True Self. I'm Elisa Bogarts, your guide on this journey to discovering the most genuine version of yourself. Each episode is a step towards unveiling the incredible power that lies within you as we strip away all the shoulds and shine a light on the coulds. Together, we'll explore the path of self-empowerment, self-confidence, and the courage to be unapologetically you. Thank you for being here. So let's dive into today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about how work-life balance is a false dichotomy. So we can stop separating the two and instead embrace an integrated life with flexibility and adaptability. Today, my guest is Lara Thornley Hall. Lara is a transformational coach, and she exemplified the advantages of integrated living over seeking work-life balance. And Lara founded Thought Renovations coaching and a Mathnasium franchise. And now each business informs the other for higher value from innovation and deeper learning. The Australian native passionately describes how this integration supports authenticity, which is perfect for today. And opportunities now create harmony rather than conflict. And she's now based in Missouri with her family, and they bond over word puzzles and baking bread. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thanks, Elisa. Lovely to be here.
Yeah. So tell me, I guess we kind of touched on a little bit about how did you get into this field of work and just why are you so passionate about it?
I guess, like so many people, the pandemic was a difficult time for me and my family. At that
Mhm.
time, I was a corporate executive. I was a VP of operations in a federal government consulting firm, and I had about 150 people reporting to me. And we were sheltering in place, and my child was just turning 10. And these are interesting times as a family and with the dynamics and with the changes. And that was the time where I felt the tools that I had so far for life and living and being an executive were great. And they weren't necessarily the tools that I needed to support myself and my family through this lockdown process. And that was when I started looking into life coaching and the tools that came with that. And the journey from then to now has just been deeper and deeper and honestly more wonderful.
That is awesome. Yeah, I think the pandemic did a lot for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And yeah, and especially in the position that you were in as well, with so many people and all of those people, 150 people, were probably also going through changes
Right.
and transformations in their lives. And yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does authenticity mean to you?
Authenticity. What I've really been finding from then until now is that authenticity is really when you shed the identities that you created for yourself that were connected with what you do. So for me, one of my core identities was being a corporate executive, also being a wife, also being a mother. And authenticity for me is when I actually reconnect with myself underneath all of those identities.
Oh, I love that. Shedding these identities. It's
Yeah,
so true. Actually, that just describes it so perfectly because sometimes, everybody's like, oh, well, just, sort of be yourself, it's your true self and all that. But you're right. We have all these identities and ways that we want to be and roles that we play. And it's like when all of those are gone, you can shed them off. Who's left?
exactly. And I've heard quite a few of your guests talk about personas, and personas are real and can be helpful at times.
Hmm.
I mean, I've even heard that saying, be all things to all people. So having a persona in a certain situation, that may serve everybody. That's different to how you identify yourself. And that's really the difference that I'm learning. For true authenticity, it's me connecting with myself and even allowing for a persona from time to time if it serves everybody. and still knowing who I am underneath, my curiosity, my creativity, what I can really bring to the world, and what my values are.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you're right. Because still need to, play certain roles or behave in certain ways with certain people. But who we are truly ourselves within is that our authentic selves.
Right.
Yeah. So let's dive into embracing an integrated life. So, what is that and how is it different from having this work-life balance?
What I've really found is there were so many years when I was searching for that elusive work life balance, particularly when I was in corporate life. It was like the scales from side to side, and something more goes on one side, and you try and balance it with something more on the other side, so that somehow, if they can just hold both sides steady, that seemed to be the goal. That seemed to be something that showed that we sort of had it all together. And I've found through my own journey that that really is a false narrative. It's a false dichotomy. It's a framework that doesn't serve us. And the reason why I say that is there's a couple of layers to it. One of them is that when we put work and life trying to balance against each other, then each incoming activity, each relationship, even each skill and knowledge needs to be classified. Oh, that's a work relationship. That's a personal relationship. This is a skill I use at work. This is a skill I have at home. And every incoming opportunity is also categorized in that way. And what we end up doing when we do that is we actually start splitting ourselves in two. And that's where I find the damage was for me, because I would have these different identities. My corporate identity, which is what I would apply to my work life, and my personal identity applying to the rest of life. And I really wouldn't be able to see all of myself anywhere.
Yeah, and what kind of life is that? That's really like when can you be all of yourself? It seems like never.
Right, right. And the other element that I found there over time, and I started to realize, particularly as I transitioned into entrepreneurship from corporate life, was, and I don't see it said explicitly in this way, but I really realized that the whole concept of work-life balance appears, it, for most people at least, to be very time based. So, of course, everyone will say, well, we've all only got 24 hours in the day. And of course, that's the reality on the ground. And it's not really about time. More than anything else, it's about energy. Because we all know that a 60-minute time frame can have entirely different activities, vibrations, energy, value, depending on what we can put of ourselves into it. And when we think about this work life balance and we're trying to divide our 24-hour day up, we're not looking at where's my energy? How can I replenish my energy? Because replenishing energy is so much different from replenishing time, and spending energy can be very different to spending time. And so, really, by trying to pull this together, we can recognize that if we put everything on the one plate and we acknowledge that we're an energetic person that can both spend energy and receive energy and revive our energy, that really changes the equation of how we engage with ourselves and how we engage with our life.
Yeah, it's so true. Like it's because you can, do your 9 to 5, and then say you got all this time outside of that. But like there in both sort of my work life and my personal life, there are certain people or certain situations that completely drains my energy, depletes it. And it could
Right,
just be a 30-minute meeting, and that could kind of
right,
like
right.
ruin my whole day. And so I need to go rest and recoup after that. So like that 8-hour day, and there's some 8-hour days, when I did work in corporate as well, where it was just like I was on fire and I was, had energy the whole day and it was great. And I had energy into the evenings and like the 8 hours, I felt like the amount of energy that I got depleted from me over 8 hours could be the same in 30 minutes, depending on what the situation was. And so, yeah, looking at
100%.
that, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good point. And sometimes when your energy is so depleted, maybe you need to have, a shorter work day or whatever it is you need to do to recoup that. And that's where you really need to focus your time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. And it works the other way as well. I can have a conversation with somebody in my personal life and feel like I need to recoup, and maybe actually working is the best thing to do for that.
Yes, 100%. I mean, it is at the end of the day about understanding ourselves, right? What
Mm.
recharges our batteries, and of course, introverts and extroverts may have different answers to that as well as all of the other meta programs that we have. But I mean, I remember old sayings. I mean, I basically grew up with corporate. And so earlier in the career, there was all this kind of, oh, well, we work hard and play hard, right?
Mhm.
And that was its own so-called work-life balance where, well, if you worked harder during the week, then you were supposed to party harder on the weekend. And of course, in some ways, I think that mindset can actually carry over a little bit, perhaps later in the career, perhaps when we're parenting and that sort of thing. Well, we worked harder during the week, so then we want to spend more time with our kids on the weekend. And when you start to look at that old balancing the scale and you really think about it, what we're saying is, well, if you put three more rocks on working hard, then you have to put three more work rocks on playing hard or parenting or any of those other things to keep it in balance. I mean, no wonder there's an epidemic of burnout and exhaustion.
Yeah, 100%. I remember I had that mentality too. And at one point, it wasn't just burning the candles at both ends, but I also, was working hard and then, yeah, I was going out all the time. But then I also decided to run a marathon. This third thing that got put on top of this, like, okay, now I also need to train hard, and I remember we would go on it'd be like this running, I was in like a running clinic, and
Mhm.
we would meet on a Sunday morning, and it was early for me, and I would yawn for the first like hour of the run. And I remember one of the people was like, "What? Like, how are you yawning all the time?" I was like, "I'm just tired. Like, it's just gonna take me a while. Like, can just nobody talk to me for the first little bit? I need to like get into running because I've been working hard and playing hard all week long." And oh yeah, that just became way too much. Yeah. And I, like you were saying, like adding those rocks into the different piles, and all of a sudden I gave myself a third one that I had to
Right.
work extra hard for as well. And it just, yeah, talk about burnout.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy sometimes when we look back at the things that we did because it seemed to be working to a magic formula that somebody else said would make our lives better.
Right. Yeah. 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 And that's something that I love about being an entrepreneur is that you can kind of work that schedule a little bit more. Like I really
Mm,
noticed my energy, which is why with this podcast I don't do video, because being on video, there's something about the camera, where it's like, oh, I don't want my resting bitch face to show, or I don't want, or I see myself sometimes, I'm like, oh, so I feel like I have to be like smiling and kind of trying to be pretty the whole time. And that like is exhausting. And so I
right.
like often, when the pandemic hit and all of a sudden everything turned to Zoom. Oh, and then all of a sudden I felt like I had to do that all the time. And so like, just getting away from the Zoom or getting away from the camera, to me is a way of saving my energy and
Mm,
sort of like
mm,
preserving it. So because if I'm on Zoom, all and some people very much are like, you have to be on camera. I'm like, okay, but if I can be off camera, then I do. And but yeah, but what I love about being an entrepreneur is that for one, there's that choice. right? I can
Right.
do this or I cannot do this. And there's a little bit more flexibility with the time as well. Like there are some days where it could be any day of the week where I feel completely demotivated. And it's like, okay, you know what? Like maybe this is a rest day. Maybe this is a day where I need to recoup or do something different. And then other days, and it could land on a weekend, whatever day it might be, where I just am super focused on my work and could work for hours and hours. And so I love that flexibility of being an entrepreneur because that 9 to 5 kind of like you have to be here and this is when you work, regardless of how you feel. Um, I found difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I'm continuing in my entrepreneurship journey, and I've been on this journey now for about 2.5 years, and it really has been layer by layer of transformation for me.
Mm.
One of the first things that conceptually I really struggled with was as an employee, as a W-2, even at an executive level, you really are still trading time for money, right? I mean, that is the employee experience. And being an entrepreneur in the early days of coaching, I still was connecting time with money. And in a lot of ways, I really just transferred my corporate executive identity to an executive life coaching identity. And I really didn't understand how different entrepreneurship was. And when you break that time equals money formula, and you see that money equals value and value equals energy, it's a
Mm.
completely different paradigm. And even after 2.5 years, I feel like I'm still learning more and more about what that means in the way I spend my energy and in the way I view my time and in the way I view my days. And that's where a lot of my learning has really come from, layer upon layer, as I really start to transform into the mindset, into the neurology of an entrepreneur, which is just so different to serving in an organization.
Yeah, it 100% is. And I feel like I'm still on that journey as well.
Right, right. I think we need to be very gracious with ourselves and to
Mhm.
allow ourselves to embrace all that we know now and all that we are now, and to understand that we are still transforming, we are still growing and changing. And I know for me, after about a year, I added a secondary business on, and that's where things got spicy because I was still in my old work-life balance, time equals money dichotomy, and I added a secondary business as well. And that really started to challenge the old formulas for me. Because my secondary business is a franchise, and then I'm actually an employer and I have a team, and this is bricks and mortar. And so there's opening times and closing times and a range of other things. And to really start to understand that as the entrepreneur, where I invest myself, where I invest my energy, where I allow the skills to transfer from one business to another, where I allow one business to inform the other, just like we can have our lives inform our work and our work inform our lives. Just when we start to integrate that all together, that's where I've really started to see that exponential value equation really light me up.
Yeah, I can't imagine that because yeah, again, that's like a whole nother different type of entrepreneurship even, right? Brick and mortar
Right.
versus like online life coaching. Yeah.
And one of the earliest messages I kept hearing from people, whether it was in the franchise world, it was like sort of frowned upon that I had another business, or in the life coaching world, that it was sort of frowned upon that I had another business, because a lot of people still had very traditional views of things and still saw everything as a competition. And that was one of the early challenges for me to really see how is it like I in the early days I would say, well, they're in parallel and I can bounce from one to the other, and that was true. And in the old work-life balance mode, which is really built on a lot of scarcity, I would a little bit like we see ourselves as so deft at multi-skilling. I would think, well, I'm really agile and I can just bounce from one to the other and I can do both at once. And yes, and I've been coming to realize that there's so much more depth than that. And I've now got to the point, only in the last probably 6 months, where I can really start to share stories and insights as to how one business can inform the other. And by generating energy and value from one business to the other, how I can actually create greater value in myself and in my businesses by allowing one to inform the other. And that's really made all the difference rather than just seeing myself as a ping pong between the two.
Right. Yes. And so you kind of were talking, we touched on this a little bit about how this integration is really key with flexibility and adaptability that you were just sort of talking about and like shifting this reality. So can you talk about that a
Right.
little bit more?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we really bring our full selves to the table. And when we allow ourselves to shed the identities that keep us really bound to one view of ourselves, and we're able to really look at all of our skills and bring all of our skills and life experiences to the table, that's when we can start to find that there is so much more that can happen. So I can give a couple of examples. My franchise is an after-school math learning centre. It's global, and so there are about 1,000 Mathnasiums around the world. My Mathnasium is the first to have an imagination chair because I recognised that our students were coming in after a hard day at school with their brains already fried and often their nervous systems already out of kilter. And the Mathnasium hour allows for a 5 minute settling period where we're often just honestly talking about the weather or what happened in the day. We set up an imagination chair where our students can come in, and as part of that 5 minutes of the hour, they can actually listen to an audio journey where they discover that numbers are like characters in a story and they can solve mysteries together and really just have the opportunity to calm their nervous system and activate their brain in a more creative and imaginative way. And that's an example where my life coaching has informed my franchise business and created innovation and a value there that hopefully over time will be able to go global with the 1,000 other after school math learning centres in the network because I've been able to bring something new and fresh to the table.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And it's true. And if you hadn't had the life coaching, maybe you would never have had that idea or even know about that their nervous
Exactly.
systems are probably a bit fried and their brains are,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
And it's
awesome.
I've then found that it's gone both ways. I've had lots of different life coaching trainings, and I'm a lifelong learner. So I
Mm,
started with sort of more traditional conscious reframing and then got a little bit deeper into positive intelligence. And I think you know that program as well. And
mhm.
then I went deeper still into meditation and hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming and all the things and all the things. And one of the elements that I heard so often was don't work harder than your clients. And
Mm.
I'd heard it quite a number of times over a period of time. And I was aware that there were a couple of my clients that I was kind of feeling like I was struggling for them or with them, but I couldn't really see it or put a handle on it. I just kind of felt this twinge every now and then when I heard my mentors say, don't work harder than your clients. It's their work to do. You can guide them, you can ask questions. It's their work to do. That transformation work is their work to do. And then one day, with one of our math instructors, a very passionate young man and a great instructor, I saw him so desperately wanting his student to grasp a math concept that he was basically doing the math for them. And it was in his desperation for them to get it, but to see that, then it just clicked. Then I just knew, then I understood what it meant to don't work harder than your clients, because the inner work, the knowing, is something that our clients, it's their work to do. And even through our passion for them and our caring for them and our wanting for them to have results, a little bit like our math students, we can't do the math for them. The way they get better at math with all of our support and perhaps the imagination chair and calming their central nervous system, they still have to do the math.
Yep.
And our clients also, the work is theirs to do.
It is. It's so true. And yeah, you need to just, yeah, that was something I learned with coaching too, is that um it was this concept of the map. And it was like, when you have a client, you want to completely let go of your map. So your map is like, all your life experience
Mm,
and everything that's led you up until now.
mm,
You need to step off of yours and onto theirs to understand them and help them with their, transformation and what's going on with them. Because we do that a lot as humans, right? We hear someone say something and it tweaks something in our brain that we relate to them, because we're always trying to build sort of rapport, right? It's like that whole
right,
love, safety,
right.
and belonging. Like, okay, well, I can belong with you if I can relate to you in this thing. So I'm
Mm-hmm,
going to take over with
mm-hmm.
my story. But when you do the coaching, you have to like, and it comes up. And I remember when I first started to learn coaching, it was like, and they made you be very aware of it. And I remember being like, oh, nope, that's my story. Oh, nope, don't say that. No, I really had to like
Right.
focus on what the other person is saying and get onto their map and understand how they're going, because you want to coach them, because you can't lead them where you think that they might go based on your experience. You need to ask
Mm-hmm,
them
mm-hmm.
questions so that they can lead themselves where they need to end up.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true. And I think I started to learn that in a deeper way when I was studying neurolinguistic programming, and that's really just an examination of the way the mind works, right?
Mhm.
Because the simple reality is, I mean, we might feel overwhelmed with information these days, right? With it coming at us in all directions, but actually all the time there's always been more information than our brains can process, with, our visual, our auditory, and even, taste, touch, and smell. There are millions of bits of information coming to our brain all the time from the moment we're born, and of course, actually, even a little bit before. And so our brains are designed to delete, distort, and generalize that information because it's all too much coming at us all at once. And
Mhm.
so that deleting, distorting, and generalizing, it's what our brains are supposed to do to create our reality, our view of the world, our internal representation of what happens. And of course, this is why we all know that if 10 people saw an event, they will all come away with potentially completely different stories about the event and what happened, because everyone is processing the information a different way. And of course, even when people sit and watch a movie together, they can come away with a completely different take on the movie, a completely different experience. And so when we recognize that, and we recognize that when our clients tell us a story, we are hearing their world through their filters.
Mm.
And if we then reprocess what they picked up through their filters and then reprocess it through our own filters, then we're also taking a second take on their reality. And that's why we always have to allow them to be in their reality rather than trying to add our own layers to it, right? And
Exactly.
and that's what's so important. And this is honestly where this flexibility and adaptability comes in. It's about shifting the reality, because our reality, across work, across life, across all of these different areas, when our brain deletes, distorts, and generalizes, a whole nother aspect of what is happening now is, of course, we're conscious and aware of what's happening outside of us and we're processing it, but we're often quite unaware of what our unconscious mind is doing.
Mm.
I know there were some newspaper headings probably decades ago now. Oh, we only use 10% of our brain, which is based on some findings, but a bit of a misrepresentation of it. Our unconscious mind is like the supercomputer that has all the data from all of our life experiences. And our subconscious mind, its prime directive is for our wellness, right?
Right.
So it has stored all of this information, all of these life experiences, as well as that negative energy that we weren't able to process at the time. And to bring us back to wellness, while it might store that negative energy for a while, because sometimes we just have to be in survival mode and sometimes we just have to soldier on. We can't always process things that are happening at that time. Our unconscious mind, to take us back towards wellness, will project, will focus, will help us see situations outside of us that will create the same opportunities for us to process that negative energy. And when we recognize that and that that's influencing our view of reality, then, for example, if someone might say, oh, well, my boss is a jerk. Well, in the old work-life balance paradigm, it's sort of like, oh, well, one of the marbles on the work side of life might be a dark color because my boss is a jerk. But of course, I can just escape that when I go home and leave that negative energy at the office. Well, what if that actually isn't a full view of the way our mind works and the way we work as energetic beings? What if the boss being a jerk is the focus of our mind because we're actually projecting that. We're focusing on that because we have something deeper within ourselves that needs our attention and needs our healing. So that's, of course, where coaching comes in, where we can take something from that presenting problem outside of us. And then, with a few good coaching questions, as an example, we might find that somebody thinks their boss is a jerk because, with all the stories, they actually feel unappreciated. And when we ask them, oh, are there any other areas in life where they feel unappreciated? Then what if that's not only at work? What if that's also with the families, not appreciating the way they provide food on the table? Or what if it's with the girlfriend who shows up late for lunch each time and doesn't seem to respect or appreciate our time? That's when we start to understand, well, if you have this dichotomy of work-life balance, then you might not even see the connection. You might not even see the opportunity to go deeper and to really understand what is really troubling me. Where is the negative energy inside of me that, if I release it, brings me closer to wellness? And that's where the coaching, going down the layers and down the layers, regardless of which silo the situation is in, when we integrate ourselves and our subconscious and conscious minds, that's when we really start to go deeper into our own selves, our own authenticity, and our own healing.
Yeah, it's so true. And when you start to get that awareness, then you're like, oh, you sort of see it
Right.
everywhere. You're like, yeah, right. I'm starting projecting this on everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
really going on? It really needs to be healed.
Right. And I know so many times I've coached a lot of executives, and so many times they've got these patterns that recur in their lives. A classic one is a toxic work environment.
Mm,
and they'll change jobs and change jobs. And then they'll find, well, yes, there's the toxic work environment. And then on the other side, there's the toxic relationships, right?
yeah.
And because they've separated work from life, they don't necessarily see the connection and they don't necessarily understand that that's the pattern of behavior that they're creating because there's something deeper inside of them that they have the opportunity to release negative energy about and to really find healing so that they can connect with people in a new way. And perhaps after that's happened, the boss doesn't change at all, but when they then reprocess a situation, even with the same human being, their own representation of that is completely different because they've been healed and that history and that storehouse of negative energy inside of them has been released. And that human being over there can still have the exact same qualities and characteristics, but their representation of that and the way they experience it can be completely different and the pattern's broken. And that to me is the beauty of that journey, which when you integrate and when you actually bring all of your life experiences together and all of yourself to your life experiences, that's where you can see the healing that can come from it.
Yeah. And that's where the work really starts to happen because you can start to heal and then you want to start repatterning, right? And rewiring and seeing things
Right,
differently. And like,
right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's such an awesome journey. Oh,
Mm.
this has just been so awesome. We talked about so many things. And the thing that really sort of stood out to me was your beautiful definition of authenticity, how it's like how we shed identities that we created. And it's really about
Mm.
doing that we connect to ourselves and looking at how we use and sort of spend our energy instead of time boxing everything, and how you said that money equals value, which equals energy, which I just thought that
Right.
really, really stood out to me. And then just at the end here, we looked about how we create our realities, and how
Mm.
we can, how we
Mm.
do create them and how we can also shift them.
Right.
So Laura, where can our listeners find you online?
Yes, so my company is Thought Renovations. So thoughtRenovations, one word.com is my website. And then also on LinkedIn, they can find me under Thought Renovations for my company or just my name, Lara Thornley Hall.
And you have a gift for us as well, right? What's the gift you have for our listeners?
Yes, yes, I do. So I love meditation, and with meditation, the opportunity for hypnosis. And all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. It's a journey that we can choose to go on. And when we start talking about our unconscious mind, the hypnosis is where we actually go below the critical faculty and we are able to make changes in our unconscious mind and explore there and bring about the healing. So the gift is a personalized meditation. There are a few different focuses available. One can relate to decreasing imposter thinking, another might relate to a relationship with food or with alcohol, or simply a relationship with sleep and the opportunity to really be able to integrate better our conscious and unconscious minds there and to take that hypnotic journey to really be able to make some changes in our neurology so that we can sleep better, so that we can shed some of those other imposter identities. And once again, it really is coming back to that authenticity.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That sounds very cool. Definitely go into the Freebie Vault and get that, people. Personalized one. That's awesome. And so
Lovely.
to end us off, do you have any final words of wisdom?
Absolutely. What I really want us all to remember is that our relationship with ourselves, that's our key relationship. That is the wellspring of authenticity. And to invest in the relationship with yourself is the best investment you will ever make.
Thank you so much, Laura, for being here and for sharing all your wisdom and everything that we went through today. It was just totally awesome.
Lovely. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been wonderful to chat.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it inspired you to live a more authentic life. I'd love your help in inspiring more people to live authentically, so please follow, rate, and leave a review so we can create a ripple effect of authenticity. Until next time, stay true to you, be bold, and thrive on your own terms. This is Elisa, signing off authentically.